your best story that is 100 real, but nobody believes you? Story 1. I was in Sao Paulo, Brazil, on a business trip. The night before departure, I wanted a drink, but the lounge of the hotel was closed for a private party. I didn't want to go out of the building alone at that time. So I started talking to one of the private guards. Then this lady came closer and asked if there were problems. I explained to her I was hoping to get a drink, but didn't want to bother. She started talking in a very good English. I could speak enough Portuguese to get by, but am definitely not fluent, and explained me it was a party after a wedding. She was older than me, probably late 40s, but very good looking. She asked me if I wanted to join her upstairs for a drink, and she brought me to her room. We spent 30 minutes banging on every possible surface until she told me she had to go back to the lounge. I asked her why the hurry, and she told me she was the mother of the bride. I felt like in a MasterCard advert. Story 2. When I was about 16, I was in a restaurant in Melbourne with my cousin. I noticed a young guy eating with his family. I said to my cousin, haha, hey, look, it's Harry Potter, because of his similarities to Daniel Radcliffe. My cousin replied, that is Harry Potter. He was in Australia shooting an Aussie film. A bit later, I went to the toilet to pee. Whilst I was at the urinal, Daniel came in and began to pee in the urinal next to me. I looked over at him, and we made eye contact, and he said, nice one, finished, washed his hands, and walked out. No one has ever believed this, and only my cousin can vouch for the fact that we saw him, but not for what he said in the toilet TLDR. Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, told me I had a nice wand whilst we were urinating next to each other. Story 3. About 7 or 8 years ago, I was really into humorous wiki vandalizations and thought it would be funny to claim that kiwi fruit were once called hairy bush fruit. I modified the page on kiwi fruit to say so. I cut and paste some random Chinese characters from elsewhere in the article and put this in hairy bush fruit mo and goo. Since then, it has been repeated all over the place and currently returns 61,000 hits on Google. It has been printed in The Guardian, which means it is now a 100 verifiable fact and will quite likely never be removed from the offending article. It is a kind of scary implication. The Guardian journalist that wrote that article should have noted that Wikipedia was used as reference, but didn't. There could quite easily be other circular references like this, where a journo repeats something incorrect lifted from Wikipedia and publishes it, which then means the incorrect fact can be referenced in the press. Story 4. On the way to visit a friend, my husband and I got lost on a highway in Pennsylvania. By some weird chance, my husband's friend drives past us in the opposite direction. We see him and turn around to catch up to him. Finally pulling over, we are standing on the side of the road 2-lane highway, discussing the directions to the friend's house. Surrounding us are farms with corn and other various crops. Out of nowhere, a duck appears on the opposite side of the road. He is looking at us curiously while we are talking. We watch him look both ways and waddle across the road to where we are standing. Cars are honking at him as they attempt to drive past. He gets over to my husband, pecks at his shoe once, and then promptly walks back across the street, dodging cars traveling at highway speed. He made it back across the street and disappeared into the crops. He risked his life to peck my husband's shoe and simply waddled out of our lives. Story 5. A boy in my high school was into supernatural stuff, and he claimed he had somehow seen me in my bedroom. He described in detail what I was wearing. Everyone thought that I was in on it. I wasn't. Story 6. When I was 15 years old, I was in my kitchen, home alone, cutting a pineapple. There was a fly that was buzzing around my face for the past 2 minutes, and it was getting really annoying, so just for the heck of it, out of pure blind rage, I grabbed my knife and swung at the fly in midair. I sliced the fly in half, sliced it in half. After I did that, I immediately realized no one would ever believe me. Story 7. I got a call for a police officer telling me if I didn't pay some old fines within a week, he would come arrest me. The total was $267.63. It was about 2 weeks before Christmas, so I was really sweating it. The very next day, I got a check in the mail for $267.63 for overpaid child support throughout the year. Craziest, most unexplainable thing I've ever had happen to me. Story 8. No one ever believes me. I was 8 years old and my babysitter was 16. My parents worked extremely late overnight, so she often slept over. One night, she decided to sleep in my bed. I asked her to show me her, and she did, and told me I could touch them. She also was only wearing a thong. It's probably borderline assault or something, but I didn't care. I was the only 8-year-old that had asked to see and received. I looked her up on Facebook recently, and she's a beast. Story 9. Was walking home when I was 16, and a car pulled up behind me. Inside were 4 guys in balaclavas and a gun pointing out the window. The gun went click, so I bombed it over a hedge and ran like to the sound of a guy yelling, "Wait, we're not going to harm you." Edit. Since so many people are asking, not likely a prank, nope. Friendly neighborhood terrorists, either the IRA or UVF, probably the IRA. Story 10. I've posted this before. I received 100 comments and messages saying that it's not true. But it is. I was in high school. I'm at a friend's house party. My girlfriend got belligerent drunk. I'm struggling to enjoy myself because I was barely buzzed and she was being annoying. She won't stop talking about how horny she is. I just want her to pass out, but she's having none of it. Won't take no for an answer. We go upstairs into a bedroom and start hooking up. She throws me onto the floor, gets underdressed like Jim Carrey on Bruce Almighty, and turns off the lights. She rips off my clothes, straddles me, and says, "You're gonna love this," as she lowers down. It doesn't even feel good. She's making all these noises like a savage, but there's just too much friction. I wasn't feeling it, and I'm about to tell her to get off of me. She lets out this noise that sounds like a combination of a deep cough and a hiccup. I'm like, "Babe, are you alright?" She lets out a Hurricane Katrina-style, levee, smasher storm surge of explosive diarrhea all over me. Apparently we had been doing, and she lost control. So here I am, covered in Jaeger bombs, Taco Bell, and oppressive feces while in my friend's little brother's room. I try to fight off the traumatizing shock which I'm in. Someone needs to clean this up quickly. Luckily, everyone else was downstairs. I cleaned myself off with my undershirt and walked into the upstairs bathroom to find cleaning supplies. There was Resolve and Febreze there. I took those to the room and did the OL pat down and scrub. Most of it came right up. The carpet was this ugly grayish color, which made things a lot easier. I put my undershirt and her shirt we used to scrub in a plastic bag that I found in the bedroom. I popped the screen out of the window and threw it into the backyard. The coast was clear in the bedroom, except this putrid smell of rotten whale blubber. I left the window open and sprayed basically the whole bottle of Febreze everywhere like I was a hitman cleaner. We walked downstairs. I told my friend that my GF threw up in the room and that he shouldn't let anyone go in there tonight before it airs out. Volcano, and I walked outside, got in the car and drove to the street adjacent to his house. I walked in between houses to get to his backyard, hopped his fence, and retrieved the bag of deceit, sorrow, and teen anguish. TLDR, my first experience was without my knowledge. It lasted for 30 seconds until my girlfriend had explosive diarrhea over my pelvis and torso. This was in my friend's 8-year-old brother's room. My GF did not apologize. It hurt my feelings. Story 11. When I was in elementary school, my brother and I were walking home from school after it had rained all day. He started reaching his hand in all the puddles. I asked him what he was doing. Sometimes there's money in these. 3 or 4 puddles later, he pulled out a 20 bill. Not sure if he ganked it from somewhere else and planted it, or it was legit. Either way, I now check puddles for treasures when there are no witnesses. Story 12. Another one. I was watching a minor league game and asked Deion Sanders for a hello. That was it. He waved me off, and I was about 7, and somehow, what a prima donna came out of my mouth. The look on his face when he stared at me was priceless. Fast forward, and he is ending his career with Dallas, and I am waiting for a flight out. He has a huge posse holding up the line. So I yell what prima donna is holding up the line, his posse parts, and he looks at me, and then a hint of recognition hits his face, and he goes back to talking to the ticket lady with a quizzical look on his face. Story 13. How I ended up with my dog. I was on my way to the bus when I saw this dog calmly walking about. He approached me, I petted him a bit, and went on my way. For some reason he kept on following me. There were other people around us, but he kept on walking behind me. The bus station is by a busy street. I hoped to shake him off by the time I got there, but no, I wasn't sure what would happen if I got on the bus. Would he run after it? Would he hop on the bus? The stop I intended to hop off on is another heavily trafficked place. Neither of the options looked good, so I did the only thing I could think of. I headed home. On the way, I called my dad and told him a dog was following me. He laughed, thinking it was my way of trying to skip school. He went along with it, though, promising to drive us to the nearby dog shelter. Imagine his surprise when I come home with the dog. So we drive to the dog shelter, where we have to turn him in. A week or so later, we get a call saying that no one had claimed the dog or reported him missing. My dad wanted a dog different breed, though. But seeing as this fellow had followed me around, he figured, well, this is the dog. And that, kids, is how I met my dog. This is him. Story 14. When I was little, my younger brother and I were always staying with babysitters during the day. This one time, we were with the same babysitter for a few months. As soon as we got to her house, I would hang me and my brother's coat on the coat hangers that were strategically placed right before the basement stairs. My brother was too little to reach the coat hangers, so I would have to hang his for him. Well, one day, he got this stubborn idea that he wanted to hang his own coat. I remember being nervous, but I let him try anyway. He picks the hanger that is the closest one possible to the top of the basement stairs. As he is on his tiptoes, struggling to reach the hanger, he all of a sudden falls over and down the basement stairs. The babysitter heard him crying, then accused me of pushing my baby brother down the stairs. She told my mom about it later. To this day, no one believes me that I didn't do it. I would never hurt my little brother. Story 15. When I was in 5th grade, I ate stuffed mushrooms with Slash from Guns N' Roses while I was visiting my aunt in LA, who was a record producer for Geffen Records at the time. Story 16 was working at a bar with a girl who used to be married to a pro wrestler. One night, the British Dog, Sid Vicious, and Macho Man Randy Savage come in for beers and say hi to her. They ended up hanging out all night and get loaded, and she tells me that they're looking for some drugs. Call my dealer at the time, and he drops them off, and I and another bartender were invited to go drinking with them after a shift. Ended up going in a limo with Sid and Macho Man and doing tons of drugs on way back to their hotel, where we witnessed me and Gene Okerland killing it with some 20-something girls. Best part of the night, and maybe my life, we pulled up to a stoplight, and Macho Man incredibly amped at this point, as we all were sticks half out of the sunroof next to a group of people waiting to cross the light, and scream snap into a Slim Jim. He scared the out about half of them, and then the cheers erupted. I still chuckle about it till this day. Story 17. I once got a USB in on the first try. Edit Uvexo says otherwise. Sorry guys, apparently I lied. Story 18. I posted this story a few weeks ago here and got a lot of replies suggesting I had fabricated it. The story is, however, 100 true. So my friends and I are sitting in my apartment, and my buddy Asian Nate, the Asian part, is pertinent to the story, but also what we called him begins telling a story about how he had recently jizzed in his own while fapping. Nate is a horrible storyteller. In the middle of his story, my other buddy, Jeremiah, gets up to use the restroom. For context, Asian Nate is sitting in a lazy boy recliner that is in the corner of the living room. The restroom that Jeremiah is visiting is at the opposite end of the room and a few feet down a hallway. If I had a wager, I'd say the door to the restroom was a good 20 feet from the recliner, also pertinent to the story. Nate rambles for long enough that Jeremiah has time to take a leak and wash his hand and step back into the hallway to hear the end of the story. Evidently, Jeremiah's hand were feeling a bit chapped, and he decided to grab the economy-size bottle of Jergens lotion from our bathroom. When 4 dudes live in an apartment, the 32 FL Oz lotion bottle is a good investment, and stand in the hall while applying said lotion to hear the end of Asian Nate's fapping story. Well, I guess Jeremiah lubed his hands up a little more than expected, and just as Asian Nate is delivering the punchline to his in-the-eye story, Jeremiah looses his grip on the Jergens bottle. The miracle of physics that then took place is hard to do justice. The bottle did a perfect 180-degree inversion, landing pumped down on the floor. As Asian finally says the words, and then I jizzed in my own eye, a stream of Jergens lotion is ejected at near light speed and lands some 20 feet away, directly in Asian Nate's eye. If I live to 100, I will never see a more serendipitous series of events. It was magical. Story 19. Going back to when I was 16, playing Counter-Strike 1. 6-1 dust, pretty specific, but any Counter-Strike player knows this map like the back of their hand. I was CT, rushing tunnels, coming to the B double doors of Flash, comes out from the tunnel, completely blind. I continue my rush into the tunnel, start spraying, literally headshot, and kill all 8 people on the enemy team, ending the round while completely blind. I played the game a lot and was pretty good. This was a combination of knowing the map, knowing my movement, knowing the Colt, and pure dumb luck. Story 20. My friend got a girl pregnant when he was 13 and the girl was 15. They met at the beach in Panama City, Florida. She was rich and lived in Ohio. He was poor and lived in Georgia. My friend never told anyone but me. He is now 28 and has a 15-year-old kid only I know about. The only reason he got away with it is because this girl's family was super rich. The girl never said who the guy was and would sometimes fly down to visit him in secret. I did not believe this until I saw pictures of his kid. His kid has never met him either, and I do not think he even knows he exists. I always daydreamed that if my friend died, I would have to tell his parents that he actually had a kid, and they had been a grandpa for 15 years and never knew it. Story 21. When I was 8, I was riding bikes with my mom, hit a gravel patch, and fell. I don't remember why I didn't have a helmet on, but I hit my head on a rock and was knocked unconscious. I saw and heard 2 old ladies walking down the street. They came over and stood by me for a little while. When I opened my eyes, my mom was running out from a neighbor's house after calling an ambulance, and the old ladies were gone. 10 people came out to assist me. None of them saw those women. Story 22. One time in high school science lab, I dropped a petri dish. It fell a good 4 feet and hit the ground, bounced up a foot or 2, then shattered in mid-air. It blew my mind. Story 23. I was at a deli, and Hasidic Jewish guy, complete with a beard and glasses in front, asked me if I had a pipe. I was a stoner, so I showed him what I had. I assumed he meant tobacco. Then he pulls out a tiny jar of weed. We then walked to a nearby park and smoked weed and talked for 3 hours. Story 24. In 1974, Carlos Santana's brother George was playing in a band at the club I bartended at. This was a Monday night, small crowd. About 10 p.m., Carlos came in and sat at the bar all night. I was the only bartender, had a long conversation with him. Nice guy, but a little eccentric. Story 25. When I was about 8 years old, my dad and I were throwing the Nerf Whistler football out in the yard. My dad had quite the arm back in the day, so when we got done throwing around, he decided he wanted to send a laser right in the back of his truck from about 30 yards away. Naturally, I begin to run inside, and Dad accidentally hits me so hard with the Whistler that it has left a permanent dimple in the side of my face. Lucky for me, though, it hit me square in the jaw where normal dimples usually are. That is probably the source of why people don't believe me, but that happened. Hearing that high-pitched whistle coming directly from my face was absolutely terrifying. Story 26. Once, an earwig broke my headphones by pinching the lead. Now, I'm no entomologist, and I don't know if earwigs actually possess enough pincer strength to break wires. But those headphones were working, an earwig pinched the lead, and then they no longer worked. Story 27. Last year, I jokingly called my sister's friend, who was considerably hot, a dumb broad, and she decided to sit on my face as punishment. I sure did learn my lesson. Story 28. Had relations with an Olympic gold medal winner. She had such an intense, that her muscular legs broke 2 of my ribs. Edit. My most controversial Reddit post is about having, of course, most Redditors cannot believe it. And I am not saying what event you perv investigators. I will say it was winter I win this thread. Story 29. I posted this and I could never do this again, even if I tried a million times this Reddit thread. But here it goes. I have no proof of this happening. So whenever I tell the story, no one believes me. I believe I was 13 years old at the time, so this was approximately 10 years ago. I was fishing off the dock of my parents' beach house. I went to cast and released the fishing line into the air. A seagull was flying by at the exact time, and the hook got attached. I caught a seagull with my fishing rod. I tried to reel the seagull in to remove the hook from its mouth, but there was having none of that. It was kind of like flying a kite until I decided to cut the fishing line. Story 30. I was driving back from a wedding in northern Wisconsin with my ex-girlfriend in the summer of 2010. It was about 10 p.m., so there was no one else on the small highway, and it was actually quite peaceful. Then I came out a winding turn and saw a big tan creature on the side of the road. It was way too big to be a cat, and it definitely wasn't a dog. I tapped my girlfriend on the arm and said, babe, did you see this?" She replied, "No, what was it? I think I just saw a mountain lion." She then said, laughed lightly and said, "Baby, you're just tired. There aren't any mountain lions up here." I kept my eye on the rearview mirror, but it was too dark to see anything. I know I saw a mountain lion, but neither she or her family believed me. A few years later, reports started coming in about more sightings, which makes me believe even more that it was a mountain lion I saw. Story 31. I was at IKEA with several of my college friends. My best friend and I were behind the group and got in an elevator to go down to the parking garage separately at Atlanta IKEA. In our elevator, there was a cinnamon roll on the floor. Someone had clearly dropped it recently. The icing wasn't even smudged. My friend dared me to eat a bite. I refused, so she leans over and pulls a piece off the top and eats it. I'm all gross and telling everyone how gross you are, and the elevator opens and she shouts, "Guys, Nudzi ate a cinnamon roll, OFF the floor." And everyone believes her. This was about 7 years ago, and even now if I bring it up to her, she claims it was me who were the cinnamon roll. I did not. Story 32. As a primary school student, there was always this wall climb that everyone would try to do next to the oval, and no one could make it. Not even the year 6 students. One day, in year 5, I was in such a hurry after leaving class late to talk to teacher, and I didn't want to miss my bus. If I got over the wall, I would just make it in time. So I ran at the wall, jumped, and scrambled up it, reaching a handhold no one had got to before, which allowed me to easily hoist myself over. And I made the bus. No one saw me climb up or jump down, and no one believes I did it. Story 33. As a child, I can remember standing out on the apartment balcony and watching kangaroos in the distance. My mother used to make homemade clay for me to play with using flour and some other kitchen materials. I didn't have a bed, slept in a mostly empty room with a few toys, mostly cars, and one of those Hot Wheels tracks that go around a loop. I've never been outside the U.S. My mother claims she's never done this or even knows how to make clay, and that I've always had a bed, and in 100 Sure or Not Adopted, sure enough those memories are there, multiple memories of it, not like some kind of weird out of the ordinary kind of memory. More like, those were general kind of memories from childhood. Story 34. When my grandfather died, I didn't go to his funeral because I knew I couldn't handle it. I was pretty young, 8 maybe. A couple of weeks later, I absolutely hated myself and would always say in my mind I should have gone at least 5 times a day. I sighed that. Well, my brother and I were playing the Wii, and when I turned around, my grandfather was sitting on one of the chairs in the room smiling. He said, "It's okay, Flognikin. It's okay. Everything will be all right." I started to tear up, and I said, "Grandpa, I blinked, and he was gone. Story 35, when I was 15 or so, I was outside swinging. IDGF what you think, I loved to swing. There was a storm looming at the time, so the playground was completely empty, so I was swinging la 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 la, and I looked up in the sky. Know what I saw? I saw a flying saucer, yes, I saw a UFO. I skidded myself to halt and ran out in the field to watch it better. My eyes wasn't fooling me. There was a flying saucer right there. It was about the size of a dime from my vantage point of view. It looked exactly as it did in the 50s sci-fi flicks. It was metallic, it was circular, it had that dome coming out of the bottom center. The only difference between the one I saw and those in the movies was that they didn't fly in a straight line. It was kind of oscillating left and right, kind of surfing through the air. I watched it for a good minute until it disappeared into the clouds. I ran home. My home was only a block away from the playground. I barged into the house and screamed to my dad about what I saw. Fate must have been mocking me at that moment. Do you know why at that moment there was an episode of that 70s show running? It was that episode where Kelso swore that he saw an UFO and convinced everybody to watch the sky with him. At the end, he found out it was only some plane lights or something like that. My father looked at me for a moment. Then he looked at the episode for a moment. Then he just lost it. He laughed hysterically in my face. I didn't know what to think or do at the moment. I knew how ridiculous this whole thing looked. Then I just lost it. I laughed out loud. I spent the next hour trying to convince my dad that I actually saw an UFO. I really did. Not saying that I saw aliens or anything like that. I just know I saw an UFO. It wasn't a weather balloon. I'm dead serious. To this day, I still tell this story to people. Nobody have ever really believed me. Story 36, I was driving home one night, and it had just started to snow. So it was really slippery. I hit a patch of ice or something and spun an almost 360, probably like a 310 in the middle of the interstate. Luckily, I didn't hit anything, and everyone behind me stopped in time. So I just drove away like nothing happened. It was pretty freaky. I wouldn't believe someone if they told me it. Well, I guess this is more common than I thought judging by all the similar stories. Story 37, when I was like 11, I went to this big children's fishing festival where all the kids in attendance got their names put into a hat and then drawn out to determine which guide. They were paired within groups of 2 to 3 per guide. Well, lo and behold, my name is first, so my brother and I get to go with the number 1 guide there, who happens to be a professional fisherman or something. The guy was the only guy to come with his own cameraman, like an actual cameraman tagged along with us. So apparently this guy, who was very nice and I had a great time with, is a somewhat famous fishing video maker, and my brother and I were filmed every time we reeled in a fish. The guide told us we may make it into one of his videos or even onto a fishing TV show, but he didn't know for sure. So one day I'm sitting there watching ESPN on a Sunday morning before church, and no, there I am with my little brother catching a big-ass walleye. Of course my parents were getting ready, and my brother was in the shower. So no one else saw it, but it was nuts. This was before DVR or anything, and I had no idea it was coming, so I couldn't set up a recording, but I was on ESPN for like 30 seconds. Probably the pinnacle of my fame right there. Story 38, in one of my 2 shooting training, I shot 22 rounds into the 3 same holes, but nobody believed me, and I don't blame them. The sheet showed 3 very close holes. I was absolutely sure I was aiming right at the exact same spots. Still got Marksman Award for the real shooting test 1616 on the head. You're given 1 score as long as you land shot on the target. Story 39, walking along one day in the Midwest U.S., and a thought hit me like a ton of bricks. It seemed to come from somewhere or somehow other than the way other thoughts randomly enter your consciousness. It hit me so hard that it made me stop dead in my tracks. The thought was a name, Mao Zedong. I shrugged my shoulders and moved on. The next day, I went to a convenience store and saw a newspaper with a huge headline 3 inches high. MAO dies with a subheadline, news doesn't reach U.S. for 24 hours. Did some quick math, and the time of the random thought from the day before was about 1 hour after he died. Story 40, I was walking down my driveway to wait for the school bus in middle school, and I noticed a cute little fawn maybe 10 yards away. I live in a wooded area. I was just thinking how cute this little guy was when its mother comes crashing through the woods, headbutts my hip, and then hauls back through the trees with its baby. I had a bruise on my hip for a week, and no one would believe how I got it. Story 41, like 6 years ago, I accidentally jumped into my parents' pool with my iPod and headphones in my pocket after mowing the lawn in the scorching heat. I freaked out and got out as quick as possible. My iPod was still on in my pocket when I pulled it out. Now I had probably 2,000 songs on this thing. Yet, the song that showed up on shuffle was The Sound of Silence. It played for about 10 seconds, then my iPod passed on. People pretend to believe me, but I know they doubt it. Story 42, when I was on a run. It was getting late, the sun had set, and it was getting dark. I was about half a mile from home. All of a sudden, I get smacked in the face. I look around as I continue running and realize that a bat had flown into my face. Story 43. People don't believe this happened to me. My wife was there and saw the whole thing. At a pizza place, little girl with mommy and grandma is learning that mommy has a real name too. They asked her, what does mommy call daddy? She did not understand the question. Then they asked, what does daddy call mommy? And her cute little eyes just lit up because she knew the answer. She knew what daddy calls mommy, and she announced to the entire restaurant that daddy calls mommy asshole. Story 44 was watching a particularly steamy scene in Game of Thrones. Mum walks in. Naturally, she assumes it's nothing I can say can convince her I'm not in a dwarf. Story 45. When I was 12 years old, I owned a Chihuahua named Taco. We named him this because he looked identical to the famous Taco Bell dog on the commercials. You know, Yo quiero Taco Bell. Anyways, one day at home, Gulf Coast of Florida, I took Taco out for a little walk so he could go to the bathroom. Well, mind you, Chihuahua's legs are so short that if they run away, you can literally go catch them with no problem, so leashes aren't required. So back to the story, Taco was minding his business, and as the 12-year-old boy I got distracted by a pair of lizards on a nearby tree. I noticed a shadow fly by, and then heard a little yelp. I switched my focus only to see Taco in the talons of an eagle or hawk flying away into the sunset. I then proceeded to scream, Taco, but I couldn't do anything about it. So I walked inside and told my mom, and she still doesn't believe me to this day. 8 years later, no one believes me, and I am still missing Taco. TLDR, I watched my Chihuahua fly off into the sunset in the talons of an eagle hawk. Story 46. Once I was at an expo show, and it was kind of late. Everybody was leaving, and me and a couple of friends are hanging out at a bar that was open to where the people walked. All of a sudden, a golf cart goes through at max speed in reverse and is being driven by a street kid, the kind that asks for money at the streetlights. He drives this thing into a married couple, and I see the woman fly and crash into a thorn bush. It was surreal. Then I see the kid being taken away by the expo security guards, crying. People don't believe me when I tell this story. I find it hilarious and consider myself to be truly blessed for being one of the few people that had the chance to live such a big WTF moment. Story 47. In February, I went with a friend on a backpacker trip to India. It was triggered by us not knowing what we wanted in life, so everything was pretty spontaneous and radical. We landed in Bangalore and had a good 2 weeks of traveling until we ended up in tourist-riddled Palolem Beach, Goa, at a cheap bungalow. After 2 weeks, we were supposed to check out so we could move on and travel somewhere else. But the night before that, something happened that changed our plans. We were walking on the beach to a so-called silent party where everyone has headphones to listen to music because of noise regulations at night. As usual, I was carrying my guitar with me that I had bought there because it was a good way to strike up conversations with people and just jam. We passed by these two nice Indian guys who started talking to us. No big deal. They just wanted to chat, right? They ended up inviting us to breakfast the next day. Coincidentally, the same day we were checking out, we agreed because we were already used to talking to strangers, so we didn't think more of it. The next day, we checked out as planned and met them. It would just take an hour or something, we thought. Suddenly, they point to their car and tell us to get in so we could drive to their apartment nearby. I found that a bit weird as I was thinking we would just go eat at a restaurant or something, but my friend had already gotten into the car, so I decided to think no more of it. After a 10-minute drive or something, we arrived into their apartment. When we got there, we noticed two more Indian guys, and the mood quickly changed. We tried socializing with them, but it seemed like they were almost waiting for something. Suddenly, they proposed to us that we could help them smuggle jewelry to Japan, and we would be greatly rewarded. Besides, according to them, it was also a loophole in the regulations which made it legal. This is where my warning signals went sky high. We said we would rather not participate in the scheme of theirs, and we would rather be on our way. That is when things turned kind of ugly. They got very pissed off and told us we had no choice. Then we had to sign a bunch of papers, give them our signatures, let them take pictures of our passports and credit cards. As we did all of this, a bunch of other Indians also arrived, so we were surrounded and didn't know how we were going to get out of this mess. After a bunch of business stuff and meeting a super creepy guy Dave Grohl lookalike with lots of tattoos and long hair who seemed to be somewhat in charge of the whole thing, we were put in a car with three of them and driven off to a nearby bigger town and checked in a shitty motel near the train tracks. We would never be alone, we could never get out of their sight, and we were scared at this moment. The next day, we woke up to a phone who allegedly was Indian Toll Customs who said they had found jewelry on the way to Japan and that we needed to give them the appropriate papers as sign of proof of purchase. This was obviously not Indian police, but the guys who held us wanted us to believe it, and they always insisted that this was a legit thing and the jewelry was real. Oh, and I failed to mention they showed us the real jewelry made of diamonds and emeralds, and they even let us see them send it. After this, we almost started believing that it was actual police that had called us, and we now thought we were wanted. It's crazy what your mind can do to you when you fear for your life. So now the guys say that we will be waiting for more people involved in this who will help us get out of this mess. We are quite scared now, and we propose that maybe we can sit in the restaurant downstairs to be in public. The guys tell us to relax, and 5 minutes later, at least 5 to 6 more guys arrive. One guy is a Scar, and another one introduces himself as Max, and that he would help us deal with toll customs. We would later find out that Max was a psychopath and had no regard for his own life at all, and would do anything to get what he wanted. At this hotel, we now had to call our banks and try to increase our MasterCard credit limits, and then they would empty our accounts with a card terminal they had brought probably from one of their fake jewelry companies. I had to go to a nearby internet CAF to log into my net bank, and while I did that, my friend found out that Max was psycho and got threatened by him. He didn't tell me about this until later, though, so I didn't know how to mess with him. When I got back from the CAF, I told them that the bank refused to unlock all of my money because of rules for a good reason, and Max snapped at me. He stared me right into my soul and told me not to lie to him. That is when I found out that he was a psycho. I repeatedly told him that there was nothing I could do except try to get people from home to wire me more money. Eventually, he let it go, and we could move on. After spending the whole day there getting our bank accounts emptied, they put us in a taxi they bought or rented or something and drove us into the jungle in the middle of the night. This is where we thought we would definitely get murdered and dumped into the jungle. We had heard about tourists going missing in Goa, so I even had my shitty dull pocket knife from Toscana opened and ready to defend myself if the worst should happen. After a long drive with 2 different drivers who apparently had no driving skill at all and almost got us killed twice on the road, we eventually ended up in Mumbai. They drove us to the airport there, and at the first terminal, I had to empty the last of my account and give them the cash right there surrounded by at least 10 security guards with MP5s. By the way, we didn't want to ask them for help because we legitimately thought there was a chance we were wanted by Indian authorities. As I was going to hand Max the last of my money, I refused and said I didn't want to. This was a bad decision. He just stood there for 5 seconds staring at me before slowly just filling up with rage. I could see him just fueling up and that he was going to snap at me. He blurted out a bunch of words at me and threatened that he would slit my throat before charging toward me. Luckily, the other guy who was with us, who was slightly more reasonable and sane, held him back, but a security guard came up to us and asked us if we were okay. It must have been a weird sight for that guard coming up to me with 100,000 rupees in my hand, 2 Indian guys who looked crazy and looked like they were mafia, and me just being able to talk because of the fright. I really wanted to just end it all there and ask for help, but they had told us they would send us on a plane back home, obviously, so we would not be able to report them. So I decided to tell the guard we were okay. He looked at me with a really weird look and told me my money was supposed to be in my pockets. After this incident, we were told to get into a taxi and drive to the other terminal to get on the plane back home. I felt an urge to just stay there considering I would be sitting next to a psycho who had just told me he would slit my throat, but my friend was still with me and I couldn't just leave him, so we got into the taxi and drove to the other terminal. At the other terminal, we took an elevator to a more secluded part of the airport with not much people, and Max told me to give him the money I had refused him earlier. I was a bit reluctant, mostly because I was just scared of him now, so he went into rage mode again before hitting me in the stomach, emptying my pockets, and started to burn the cash. Yes, he was absolutely mental. He said that it was nothing to him and claimed I had offended him by offering him the money right after refusing him it. After the rational guy managed to calm him down again over some time, I ended up giving him the rest of the money, and we managed to get into the terminal and get our tickets. Finally, we were away from those people and had legit tickets back home. We just had to get through the passport check that Max claimed they had bribed for like 500,000 rupees or something. We were still scared of Indian police, and we just wanted to contact police back home. But we managed to get through the check without sweating too much. We took the plane from Mumbai and landed in Abu Dhabi, where we scraped together the last of our money to buy ourselves each our Big Mac. Eating beef after having food poisoning and only eating chicken in India was a big thing and felt very relieving. We took another plane from Abu Dhabi to Purcell and then home on a small propeller airplane. When we landed back home, we contacted the police at the airport, and after that we have had to be questioned by police for many hours. Whether the bank insurance will cover the losses is still not decided, but I'll find out the next few days. We also had to go meet a psychologist several times to find out if we had post-traumatic stress. TLDR, got kidnapped and robbed by Indian thugs mafia, threatened and beaten and sent on a plane back home. AMA?